Do you think you had any choice about going into digital and online?
Yeah, I think we did have a choice, but if in fact we hadn't done what we'd done, then the ABC would be in decline.
It means that it's increasingly difficult for Fairfax and News Corp to compete in this online space.
They spend too much of taxpayers' money in trying to compete with private enterprise.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Garnett, talking about the role of the ABC in the changing media landscape. This month, there is a handover of leadership within the ABC. The Managing Director, Mark Scott, is leaving after pushing the organisation into the digital age. He's been an agent of change, and now the ABC is the third most popular news website in Australia. Mark Scott appeared on ABC's Media Watch a few weeks ago, where he argued that he made the right decision leading the ABC online.
Do you think you had any choice about going into digital and online and 24-hour news?
Yeah, I think we did have a choice, but if in fact we hadn't done what we'd done, then the ABC would be in decline. There's no doubt if we'd just sat where we were and been a traditional, old-style linear broadcaster on radio and television, we'd still be held with great affection by the Australian people, but we wouldn't be as relevant, we wouldn't be as compelling, and I don't think our future would be as healthy as it is today.
Australian-born Michelle Guthrie, a former Google executive, will replace him. She'll be the public broadcaster's first female managing director in its 83-year history, and she'll continue Scott's push to a digital-first operation. As the former head of Google, one of her main focuses will be the ABC's online presence.
No, I think the big focus is really around reaching Australians wherever they are and whatever they're doing, and that's going to be through TV, through radio, but increasingly through digital and particularly on mobile phones, because the time spent on mobile phones has been sort of increasing at an incredible rate over the last few years.
Seven West Media CEO Tim Warner says the ABC is huge competition now.
I believe that the public broadcaster should have a presence online, but it shouldn't be to the point where it's resourced to such an extent that it does affect the profitability of commercial enterprise.
But, like her predecessor, Mrs. Guthrie says the ABC isn't to blame for problems of commercial media.
Ultimately, I think not just in Australia, but newspapers all around the world are struggling because information is otherwise available to them. And as I said, not just from the ABC. The ABC has been going for more than 80 years. It didn't, and it's part of its charter. It has as part of its charter to have an important digital presence. So it's not like we snuck up on people over 80 years. We've always been there.
The Gillard government amended the ABC's charter in 2013 to include digital platforms. In her first interview as the incoming head of the ABC, Mrs. Guthrie did not rule out seeking changes to the ABC's charter and looking at ways to make money from its content. She told ABC News 24 that the ABC already makes money from advertising on its international channels.
And online, could that ABC content go behind a paywall eventually?
It's way too early for me to be talking about any of that. My sense is that it is important on an overall basis to in budget constrained times to really look at all options around monetisation.
Setting up paywalls and advertising on the ABC is something Senator Cory Bernardi tried to implement in 2013. He told Radio National he didn't want to see the ABC threaten the commercial viability of competing online news sources.
But I do think that if it's going to compete in the online media space, it should do so on a commercial basis, or it should structurally separate it and either ask people to subscribe to it or look at taking some advertising for it to sustain its operation. The ABC is providing this service at a taxpayer's expense. It means that it's increasingly difficult for Fairfax and News Corp to compete in this online space. And I think, we need to make sure there is a diversity of media voices, and this is one way of addressing that.
And the issue you can have is when a government-funded public broadcaster starts potentially affecting the operations of commercial entities.
News Corporation Australia's Head of Corporate Affairs, Stephen Browning, says a conversation needs to be had about the role of the ABC in the modern world.
Because in its original charter, the charter was written for a TV broadcaster, and so in the digital world, we do need to have a conversation about, well, what is the ABC's role, and what is it right for it to be doing in this new world?
He says, despite their history of fierce rivalry, there are many more competitors to worry about now.
We're in a competition for eyeballs. We're in a competition for people's attention, and so yes, of course, other providers of news and information are a competitor, but there's also a billion other things that people could be doing with their time.
Our overall view of the ABC is that they spend too much of taxpayers' money in trying to compete with private enterprise.
Seven West Media's Tim Warner says the ABC is an initiative that essentially competes with the commercial sector.
And of the growing number of competitors that we have, certainly the ABC is one to be reckoned with. They allocate a great deal of resources to the coverage of news, and can I say, to a certain extent, that's part of the reason they exist. However, it's been the growth of that offering and the increase in the amount of resources that are funneled into it that we would have a bit of an issue with.
He believes it's not the role of the ABC to consider paywalls or advertising.
No, I don't believe that public broadcasters should be in the business of trying to attack advertisers. They're independent. That's the role that they serve. So no, I absolutely do not think that the ABC should be heading down the path of looking at becoming an advertising option.
But we'll have to wait and see what happens. Mrs. Guthrie will officially start the role at the beginning of May after a month-long handover with Mark Scott. This is Stephanie Garnett reporting.